But I am curious, Janine, when you look at the new CEO coming in, I know he doesn't start for a while here. Are you a little bit more optimistic that maybe the direction, the management of this company will change for the better?
I think it's still too early to say exactly what his direction will be. Our view is that he will probably take the existing strategy that they have. They do have a turnaround plan in place and put his own tweak on it, put his own spin on it, ultimately amplify that. But I think more importantly, what it means to have a new CEO in place is, for one, for the stock, it removes an overhang that we've had basically since last December when we had the management turnover of the question of who will lead this company into the next leg of growth. And then I think secondly, internally for the company, from an organizational perspective, they've essentially been in a holding pattern, having some form of turnaround plan in place, but not really having a leader to realize that plan. So I think for the employees internally there, that's key in building the confidence that the plan is going to accelerate, that there is a plan in place, that there'll be someone to lead them into the acceleration of this plan.
Well, talk to us about what you think the plan should be. I mean, we talk about these iconic brands, but we know that fashion and apparel industry can be very fickle. People are into one brand today and into another tomorrow. How does a company like this, that has such a long and varied legacy, how does it, I guess, stay fresh in the minds of consumers?
Yeah, I think that's the challenge that they have right now, particularly with the Vans brand, which is the biggest piece of their business. The Vans brand became extremely hot for a period of about 2 years pre-COVID, and then they kind of failed to innovate from there. And I think now they need to find a way to become relevant to the consumer again, because that brand has fallen out of favor. And they need to find a way to, once again, kind of drive innovation and become relevant. What we think needs to happen is just more product newness. They became overly reliant on a couple of key styles that worked really well until they didn't work anymore. And now they need to find what's new and then communicate to the consumer that that's out there. This won't be an overnight process, but we do think it's doable and still think that there's a lot of equity in the Vans brand. Don't think it's a broken brand. Ultimately, think it's one that just kind of lost a bit of freshness and newness with the consumer that they need to bring back.
And talk to us a little bit about Bracken Darrell himself, because he has an interesting background. Of course, he's coming from Logitech. He's held leadership roles at Procter & Gamble, Whirlpool, and GE. Not, necessarily from the same industry that VF Corp is in. And this is part of a little bit of a trend that we're seeing in this industry. What's some of the thinking behind that? And do you think that that's a smart move to bring in someone who's not necessarily from the industry?
For sure. We're definitely seeing that trend more of industry outsiders coming in. And I think it can be helpful just in terms of bringing a new perspective, bringing in new blood who maybe isn't as close to the industry, but has an outsider perspective. In terms of what he does bring in terms of a relevant skill set, we do think he has a lot of expertise in consumer-facing industries. He spent about 10 years at Logitech, which is a consumer-facing technology brand, and ultimately did a lot there similar to what needs to be done at Vans in terms of product diversification and bringing a more relevant product assortment to the market. So he has experience there. I think also experience with brand turnarounds. That was a turnaround. He also turned around the Old Spice brand. And then lastly, I would say just being a public company CEO for a period of 10 years is really important. I think VF right now needs someone who can reinstill confidence with the market and with investors. And that's why you've seen their PE multiple go from being over 20 times historically to now less than 10 times, because the market's really lost confidence. And I think they need someone who can bring that confidence back.
And Janine, just quickly, you kept your neutral rating on this stock after the announcement. What would you need to see to bump you up to a buy?
I think we need to start to see some green shoots within the Vans brand, which we really think is key to the turn. And I think the negative here is that even with a new leader in place, the product development cycles for footwear are very long. They're about 18 months. We also know that we're in a challenging macro environment. And even more so than that, we're in a challenging wholesale selling environment, whereas the retailers are buying their orders very, very conservatively, just knowing that the consumer is pressured. So what we really need to see is some signs of a turn, knowing that this will probably be somewhat of a lengthy process. Don't think it happens overnight. Think this is more of a 1 to 2 year turn at this point, even with new leaders in place.